Welcome to the Lake Show, brought to you by the Fort Loudoun Lake Association, produced right here in downtown Knoxville. I'm Angela Howard, the Executive Director for the Fort Loudoun Lake Association, and I'd personally like to thank CTV for hosting our show today. The Fort Loudoun Lake Association are the people that keep your lake safe and clean. We call ourselves the guardians of the lake. We're the people out there every day that are pulling stumps, floating docks, debris, logs, trash, multiple trash, and cleaning the booms and making your lake safe and clean for you and your children to ski, paddle, and swim. We also have a scientist on staff that goes and tests the water for things you might not want in there. And we come back and analyze that, and then we can write grants to go out and help clean it. Overall, we're the people that keep your lake clean. And we would love to have the end result be a perfectly clean Lake Loudoun. That's my personal vision. I grew up on this lake, and I'd like that to happen. Today, I am so honored to have Ted Nelson. Ted Nelson is retired from Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, and after working 31 years on the Tennessee River system. During his TVA career, he worked in land management, river operations, and navigation. He is also retired from the United States Army, where he served for 25 years. That's a long time if you add them all together.
Well, don't add them together. They're kind of concurrent. I was in the reserve for 22 of those years.
Well, as an engineer officer, he holds a PhD from the University of Tennessee and has consulted in international water resource projects and has served on several academic and professional boards. He resides here in Knoxville and is an avid user of Fort Loudoun Lake. Welcome, Ted. And my first question for you, because he knows so much history, we're really, really honored to have him. Give us your background and your love of the lake and how it started.
Well, I have both as a retired TVA person who worked the river system for 31 years. I obviously have a lot of professional commitment to the river system, and of course specifically Fort Loudoun, since I live on or near Fort Loudoun. My personal connections to the river, I use it all the time. I'm out there in my kayak. I've got a little Boston whaler that I keep right at my house, a couple blocks from the river. I go down, I can fish 100 yards from the launching ramp at the boulevard, catch smallmouth and bluegill right over there to my heart's content. I have used the river since I've lived in Knoxville, since 1975, so I have a very strong interest in Fort Loudoun Lake, its safety and its cleanliness.
One of the things I wanted the audience to actually hear from you is the history. You are full of rich history about what used to be the river is now the lake, and maybe you can remind us how that all happened.
Well, okay, that's a very complex and long story, but I'm going to boil it down a little bit.
Right.
And I'm only going to go back to the Civil War to start.
Good grief.
But really, before the Civil War, we used our resources up just like they were infinite. There was always going to be another tree.
Has that changed?
I hope so, and I'm going to explain why. So, after the Civil War, people began to actually think, we have finite resources. We better do something called conservation. As you may recall, the first federal park, national park, Yellowstone Park, founded, it was in 1872. So the conservation movement gets going. Around 1900, Roosevelt, not Franklin, who founded TVA, but Theodore, his cousin, was very interested in conservation. So he organized a commission called the Inland Waterway Commission because his basic premise was that you can use the river system as a basis for the economic and social development of a given region.
We need to keep that in mind. We can come back to that.
I think we will come back to that. So this commission then says, let's look at the river system as a whole. I mean, water is the basis of life, pretty much.
Are we about 82% water?
Somewhere around there. And we need air, too, but water is one of the most basic needs of life. And we've got these rivers that at this time, we were polluting terribly. We were misusing them. We were cutting down the forest all around them, causing erosion, causing all kinds of problems going into the river system. We're basically using them as a sewer. So let's take a look at Theodore Roosevelt said, let's take a look at how we can use this a river system. He wasn't talking about the Tennessee River specifically at that time, but how do we organize conservation around a river system? So let's move forward a little bit into, say, the early 1920s. And Senator George Norris is looking at how are we going to use facilities down at Muscle Shoals, Alabama. We've got these facilities that were built during World War II to produce nitrates for weapons, but now we can use them for fertilizer. So these two ideas came together. I'm going to make this real quick. I'm going to bring it right back. These ideas came together in the early 1930s, conservation based on a river system, economic, social development based on a river system. And then we've got a great example of one where we own some federal facilities on the Tennessee River, in Alabama, of course, Muscle Shoals in Alabama.
TVA.
Franklin Roosevelt, who was very interested in this whole concept of using the river system as a basis for social and economic development. So, without just going too broad on it, they said, let's organize it around the main things a river system can provide. What are the real benefits of a river system? Well, one is transportation on the river system. And of course, back then, it was very important. We didn't have the roads. We didn't have the railroads. We didn't have the airlines and all that. We're talking about people moving goods by a river system. So let's make this river system as efficient as possible. Also, we're having floods all over this country during this time. What can we do to help control those floods? Because they're devastating communities. Knoxville was being devastated by floods. Chattanooga even worse by floods. All over the United States, we've got flooding as a major problem, which costs so much to rectify. So it's worth putting federal money into something to prevent all these damages that the federal government then has to come in and try to fix. So we've got navigation as a main reason. We've got flood control, and oh yeah, about that time, electric power is beginning to become people wanting electric power not as a luxury, but as a basic need of life. So we put these three things together: navigation, flood control, and electric power. And we can do this on a multi-purpose river system. We can build these dams, and we can provide all those things. We can bring about more economic community development, and we can conserve our resources. That's it, kind of as fast as I can do it.
So that's it. From 1975 is where I heard you stopped, right? Up till forward now. I'm curious, when was the first dam built? I mean, the first dam in all these river systems going back to 1900.
Well, let's take just the Tennessee River system. Okay. Probably a lot of people know that Norris was the first dam built, named obviously after Senator George Norris, who was one of the main motivators of the Tennessee Valley Authority. Right up just north of here, we've got a beautiful hunk of concrete up there that provides all kinds of benefits up there. It doesn't provide navigation through the dam, but it provides water into the rest of the system in order to float the barges and the boats and the recreation craft and the huge yachts that we have. So it supports that kind of development, even though it doesn't have a lock in it up there. So what I'm trying to synopsize here is that we have, and I know I'm bragging a little bit, but in the Tennessee Valley, we have a technically elegant system of balancing water needs, conservation, and development. Probably the best system in the world. People have come to us from all over the world to study the Tennessee River system.
Well, then I have a question, because I know Norris Dam or Norris Lake is probably one of the cleanest lakes we have in the nation. Is it still that way?
It's pretty clean, but let's look at it in context of all of our other lakes. And TVA does every 2 years they do an ecological health index for the lakes. Now, sometimes I call them reservoirs, sometimes I call them lakes. TVA prefers to call them reservoirs because of the multi-purpose nature of them, whereas lakes tend to be more natural features or single-purpose type features for, say, recreation or whatever. Ours is a very delicately balanced system.
Ours being the Tennessee River, which
system
starts, for everybody, at the forks of the river, where the Holston and the French Broad come together. Right there starts the Tennessee River, and that's always been the case, before the dam or after. And like I said, when I grew up, it was a running river, and it was kind of sewer-ish back in, I won't say when I was a little kid. I'm not as bold as you. But down to where now the Fort Loudoun Dam is, and that's a TVA project.
That's correct.
And that started what we call now the Fort Loudoun Lake.
Okay, well, let me put that in a little context.
Okay.
The entire system is 652 miles long. It goes from Paducah, Kentucky, down through western Tennessee, through North Alabama, and then swings back up at near Chattanooga, comes back up to Knoxville. 652 miles of river.
Well, so is that completely navigable? I mean, I know people come and stop at Volunteer Landing that have come from Key West.
Yeah, isn't that one of the great benefits of navigation of the Tennessee River system? You can go from Knoxville to anywhere in the world on your boat.
You're going to dump right out into the sea.
Anywhere in the world on your boat.
So one of the things that my organization is concerned about is keeping the river clean. And I know that TVA has been a big component of changing the river. I'm curious, since you have so much history, from the sewer days till now, how much change have you seen happen, let's say from 75 to 2012?
Okay. When I moved here in 1975, it was known as Fort Nasty.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
I remember
that?
Yes, of course I remember that.
Yeah, so that kind of tells you about...
You remember the little bumper sticker that had the scuba diver with his head in the toilet saying, "I survived Fort Loudoun"?
No, I saw that, yeah. But I get the picture. But that was a pretty accurate moniker for the lake. And over time, a lot of things have happened, and it's a much cleaner lake than it was. And we could go into some details on why it's a cleaner lake. TVA, as I said just a few minutes ago, TVA rates all the lakes in the system, all the reservoirs in the system. And Fort Loudoun rates as barely fair based on 5 parameters. We don't have a whole lot of time here, so let me just tell you quickly.
Top on the 5 parameters, maybe.
5 parameters, if I can remember them all. Dissolved oxygen, probably one of the most important. Chlorophyll, fish, benthic resources in the substrate, and last but not least, let's see.
E. coli.
Well, not exactly, not exactly, but actually, so you've got the sediment, and then you got the water near the bottom. So five things that they look at, and then go into detail on each one of those. And as I said, it rates as fair within the context of the whole system.
So thank you, Ted, and it's Angela Howard, the Executive Director for Fort Loudoun Lake Association. We're the Guardians of the Lake. Thanks for joining us.